Aristotle 1 Stagira, Macedonia. To 384 BC Chalesis, Euboea, Greece, the 7th of March 320 to BC was a Greek philosopher. He was one of the most important philosophers in the history of Western civilization. 3. Aristotle wrote many books, and some of those books survive. Aristotle tutored Alexander the Great. Aristotle's father was named Nicomachus. He was a soldier for King Amyntas of Macedonia. At about the age of 18, Aristotle went to Athens to become a student of Plato at Plato's academy. Aristotle stayed at the academy until he was 27, for he left after Plato died in 347 BC. He then traveled with Xenocrates to Asia Minor. While in Asia, Aristotle traveled with Theophrastus to the island of Lesbos. They looked at the botany and zoology of the island. In 343 BC, Philip II of Macedon invited Aristotle to tutor his son, Alexander the Great. 5. Aristotle was put in charge of the Royal Academy of Macedon. During that time, he not only taught Alexander, he also taught to other future kings, Ptolemy and Cassander. Aristotle encouraged Alexander to conquer lands to the east, because he believed in the supremacy of Greek culture. 6. Aristotle believed Greek culture was better than all of the other cultures. He encouraged Alexander to conquer Persia, which was an empire to the east, one time. He advised Alexander to be a leader to the Greeks and a despot to the barbarians, to look after the former as after friends and relatives, and to deal with the latter as with beasts or plants. 7p 58. By 335 BC, Aristotle returned to Athens. He started his own school there. It was called the Lyceum. Aristotle taught courses at the school for 12 years. It was probably then 335 to 323 BC that Aristotle wrote most of his works. 5. Aristotle wrote many dialogues. Only parts of his dialogues survive. The works that have survived are probably lecture notes for his students. 8. All of Aristotle's works are like an encyclopedia of everything the Greeks knew. Some people think Aristotle was probably the last person to know everything there was to know about. In his own time, 9. Near the end of Alexander's life, he began to think people might be trying to kill him. He threatened Aristotle in letters he wrote to him. Aristotle often said that he disliked Alexander calling himself a god. The king executed Aristotle's grandnephew Callisthenes as a traitor. Alexander died in Babylon in 323 BC. Without ever going back to Greece. When Alexander died, Athenians started to dislike Macedonians again, and Aristotle left the city. He died in Euboea of natural causes that same year, 320 to BC. Philosophy. The three greatest ancient Greek philosophers were Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates. Socrates taught Plato, then Plato taught Aristotle. These three thinkers turned early Greek philosophy into the beginnings of Western philosophy, as it is today. 10. Plato's main ideas were that knowledge from the senses was always confused and not pure. True knowledge can be gotten from the thinking soul that turns away from the world. Only the soul can have knowledge of forms, the real way things are. The world is only a copy of these forms and is not perfect. Aristotle thought differently. He thought that knowledge from the senses was more important. These thoughts became some of the roots of the scientific method after hundreds of years. 11. Most of the things Aristotle wrote that we still have today are notes from his speaking and teaching. Some of his important writings are physics, metaphysics, Nicomachean, ethics, politics, De Anima on the soul, and poetics. He also had problems with the atomic theory. He did not believe in Democritus' theories about the atomic theory. He believed that all matter was continuous, whereas Democritus stated the all matter was made up of tiny indivisible things called atoms. Democritus was proved right by physicist John Dalton in 1804. Biology. Aristotle is the earliest natural historian whose work has survived in some detail. He certainly did research on the natural history of Lesbos and the surrounding seas and neighboring areas. The work's history of animals. Generation of animals and parts of animals have observations and interpretations, along with some myths and mistakes. The most striking passages are about the sea life round Lesbos, as well as live observation. He got specimens from the catches of fishermen. His observations on catfish, electric fish torpedo, and anglerfish are detailed. His writing on cephalopods, such as octopus, sepia cuttlefish, and the paper nautilus, Argonauta argo, are accurate. His description of the hectocotyle arm, used in sexual reproduction, was widely disbelieved until its rediscovery in the 19th century. He separated the aquatic mammals from fish, and knew that sharks and rays were part of the group he called Selach, Selachomorpha 14. Another good example of his methods comes from the generation of animals, in which Aristotle describes breaking open fertilized chicken eggs at intervals to observe when visible organs were generated. He gave accurate descriptions of ruminants four-chambered, four stomachs, and of the ovoviviparous egg development of the hound shark Mustelus 15. The works are traditionally listed in this sequence. Logic categories terms on interpretation propositions, truth prior analytics syllogistic logic, posterior analytics scientific method, topics rules for argument and debate on sophistical refutations, fallacies science and nature, physics change, motion, void, time, on the heavens, not the religious concept, refers to astronomy, on generation and corruption, on the process of life, meteorology origin of comets, weather, disasters, the parva naturalia psychological works, sense, and sensibilia faculties, senses, mind, imagination, on memory, sleep, dreams, and prophecy, length of life, works on natural history of animals, on the parts of animals in the movement of animals and the progression of animals, on the generation of animals Sperblethicalistic works metaphysics substance, cause, form, potentiality, Nicomachean ethics soul, happiness, virtue, friendship Eudemian ethics, virtues and vices politics, best states, utopias rhetoric debate, poetics, tragedy, epic poetry the constitution of the Athenians fragments.